I look back at my days in St John and I probably think that was probably the kindest time for me, because I felt so passionate about making sure that every one of those children had the same experience, an opportunity that I felt I hadn't quite had.
Welcome to Curious Chats and Kind Acts, the podcast that celebrates difference, kindness, and the little things we can all do to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Sonia, co-founder of the Axe Charity, for some open, authentic and fun conversations with lots of interesting, extraordinary, everyday people who are all a little bit different. Prepare to have your curiosity piqued and your heart warmed as we explore the ways we can all make a difference in the world, no matter how small. So get ready to be inspired, uplifted and motivated to be the kindest version of yourself. Let's make the world a kinder place, one conversation at a time.
Hello there, welcome to Curious Chats and Kind Acts. How are you? Today we delve into Twiggy's volunteering with St John's Ambulance, her transition to working within the NHS, and a realisation of the intrinsic nature of kindness in her actions, whether professionally or through simple, spontaneous acts of helping others. Twiggy recounts her childhood marred by family issues and her stepdad's alcoholism, which influenced her career choices and instilled in her a desire to make a difference. Twiggy's story is a testament to overcoming adversity through resilience, kindness, and a commitment to positively impacting the world. I do have to say I've known Twigs a long time, and it's such a privilege and honour to hear her story. And I thought she was just a bloody brilliant hockey goalie. How wrong was I? Anyway, we do talk about abuse and suicide in this episode, so just to give you a heads up. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, hello, Twiggy.
Hello, Twiggy.
Welcome to Curious Chats and Kind Acts, the podcast. I've never done that before.
I like it.
Thank you very much for your time.
It's all right, thanks for having me.
Do you want to just introduce yourself?
What do you want? Do you want who I am? Do you want what I do, where I'm from?
What's important to you?
Who I am?
Well, what was that then?
I'm Twiggy, or Kaylee. Nobody knows me as Kaylee, do they? So it is Twiggy. Yeah. That is the most important thing about me, who I am, Twiggy.
Your name?
My name.
We'll probably need a bit more, or it's going to be a really short podcast episode.
No, I'm only messing. What's your name? No, I'm Twiggy, or Kaylee, formerly. Oof.
Do you not like that name?
I do like my name. My whole name, I'm named after songs. Oh. And when people find that out, it just gets really awkward because they'll start singing the song.
What
so
song?
I am named after Kaylee by Marillion.
I don't know it.
I'm really glad.
I would have sung along, but
I'm really glad. And Nikita by Elton John.
No,
I'm really glad. Please don't ever let anyone else in the club know that or ask them to listen to this.
I will be listening later.
No, yeah.
And is that why you don't like your name?
I like both of those songs. It just gets a bit awkward when people start singing the song. I'm not going to sing the song for you.
And where did your nickname come from then?
Twiggy. So I played in a band when I was in high school. My favourite band at the time, I was a bit of a rebel with music, so I went from liking mainstream pop, like Steps and all just pop, Sex Club 7, straight into liking goth metal, like Marilyn Manson, straight in, couldn't go any more further away from mainstream pop. And a lot of my friends in school started calling me Twiggy because that was the name of the bass player in that band. So Twiggy stuck. And there are lots of different variations of it. Rach calls me Twiggler, Twigs, Twigsy. But yeah, that's where Twiggy came from.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And so tell us a bit. In fact, I don't need to know anymore. Maybe we can get a whole episode of just your name. So
we can go deeper.
Let's start where you want to start. Growing up.
I don't want to say. Okay, so I don't want to say I had a bad childhood because my mum was incredible. I would definitely say I've come from a problematic little world. So my stepdad was an alcoholic. Don't really know my real dad particularly well. My stepdad was an alcoholic. He ended up in prison. That actually stopped me getting certain jobs that I wanted to pursue. So his criminal history stopped me going into the police when I was 19.
Why?
So when you go into the police, you're vetted. And I got to a stage with them, and I'd passed everything. And the vet, funnily enough, they do the vetting last, or they did when I was that age. And I failed because of my dad's criminal history, which was a massive shame. But it did put me on the sort of trajectory of, well, I either want to go into, I want to be in the emergency services, which ones aren't going to vet me and penalise me for my parents' mistakes. And that was the ambulance service or the fire brigade. So that's how I ended up in the ambulance service, because I couldn't get into the fire brigade.
Because they vet too. That's a bit mean, really, isn't it? Because it's not you that's committed a crime.
No, and even now it would stop me.
What crime? Was it a super big crime?
He was put in prison for gun-related crime. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't actually even have a real gun. It was an imitation firearm, but he got 18 months inside for that. And that impacted us as a family massively. I'd say the unit. So when he came out of prison.
How old are you at this point? I mean, we've gone
17.
Straight in. Oh, so you're quite old. So
yeah.
Let's just go back a bit. So you didn't know your real dad?
I know him, but I don't know him very well. Like, I can probably count on two hands how many times I've met him. So stepdad has been on the scene from like age of 3.
Oh, so like your dad, really?
Yeah, I it's weird calling him stepdad because I still would call him dad now. He had always been an alcoholic. There'd always been problems with alcohol, domestic abuse in the household. Lots and lots of issues, I would say. It was probably a bit of a self-soother. There was me and my sister. So my sister came along when I was about 5. We have a fantastic relationship. Our relationship now is probably stronger than it's ever been. We were very like chalk and cheese when we were little. We were completely opposite. But now we're like almost identical in everything we do. And it's really, really nice. So she's fantastic. Mum is also fantastic. But Dad, I mean, even now he doesn't really bother with us. We'll always make an effort. But his side of the family themselves are just massively, like, without skipping too far ahead, because we can go into that a bit later on. His family is just a mess of problems, of really... I don't want to, it's toxic. There's just toxicity there, and it's really sad because of going through therapy from last year through to this year has taught me that environment from grandparents down into stepdad into the household that I lived in and grew up in has just completely moulded my mindset. And in the last 12 to 18 months, it's been really hard trying to look back and see things and go, actually, the people I cared about the most, even though some of them were enabling abuse essentially, were kind of responsible as well, and that's been really challenging.
So would you say this big event when you're 17 is probably the bit that is the stuff before that
there is things before that I went through. So I mean, I'll start where I started in therapy. So in therapy, they just asked me why I was there. And I went through all the things that bother me in the workplace at the moment. I'd experienced bullying, and the therapist saw straight through it. She was like, no, I want to know about you. What's happened to you? Why are you so defensive in these scenarios? What do you feel threatened by? And she made me do a timeline, and I presented her. She was like, most people give me a timeline which is handwritten on a piece of A4 paper and is a little bit scribbly with a few dates all over the show. I presented her with a 4-page PDF. I was like, these are things that happened to me. And she was like, okay, so you have birth, your sister's birth, and then you skip until you're 11. She was like, we're going to focus on that. We're going to look at that. And when I was 11, my best friend was killed. And that was, I didn't understand it. I still don't really understand it.
At 11?
I was 11. Well, so I'd actually just turned 12. It was a few days after my 12th birthday. But my friend Louise, she was only 11, and she was run over by a bus on her way home from school. And I would say that was probably a huge moment for me as a young person. When I started therapy, we started going through that whole thing. She asked me lots of questions. Do you remember how you felt that day? Do you remember how you felt the week after, the month after, the year after? And there was just this like 5 or 6 month period of no, I don't remember. I had to ask my mum lots of questions. So I've got a really good relationship with Lynn, Louise's mum. I asked her a couple of questions, and basically we come into the now, finding everything out about how I behaved. So I thought I went straight back to school. I thought I just got on with it. I knew I'd been part of like a choir for a memorial service that we did, But that was like my only real memory of it. And I remembered a lot of the music from that time. So like I remembered that there was a Westlife song. They'd covered Uptown Girl. I remembered Atomic Kitten had released a song that was really popular. I remembered that the song we sang was like When You Believe. So in that world, I was thinking the only thing that was saving me was music. And that was my memory. And the therapist was like, that's really, really interesting. And then went on to go through the rest of my timeline. And I would talk about songs and music that I would go to and sort of soothe myself with in those times. And I think that's probably why music and things have always been really, really, really good for me, because you just get lost in your own little mind. But
what are you getting lost in terms of thoughts in your mind?
I think so. When I really want to just escape reality, I'll put music on and I will just go to another reality entirely, another reality maybe where everything is different to what it is right now. There'd have been a different outcome, you know, if somebody hadn't have died or somebody hadn't have gone to prison, you know, and I think
Are they happier?
Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's quite angry. So
okay.
So what came out of therapy was that I'm internally really angry, and that I have never been able to deal with grief. So in 2015, skipping a few years, which is the next sort of phase of grief for me, my nan passed away, and I carried her to her bed in her house. And when I talked about that with the therapist, she diagnosed me with PTSD quite quickly, which is something I never thought. And I associated PTSD with soldiers in war zones, in really horrific, you know, people who've been in really horrific accidents. So I was like, I'm not really sure I understand, and I still don't really understand that how that grief can cause that to someone. I'm sort of still exploring that, which is interesting. It's an interesting journey. It's a little bit of a difficult journey because it's really heavy. But that understanding of grief and knowing that I'm 34 now, and last year to have somebody say to you, you're grieving somebody who you lost when you were just 12.
That's a long time, isn't it?
Right, okay. Well, how do I unpack this now?
Yeah, how do I stop?
So it's tough. You know, therapy has been, I would recommend anybody gets therapy if they're ready for it.
Yeah.
It's been incredible unpacking that, and the biggest catalyst that I think made me need to go to therapy. And when I go back, I'll go back to sort of talking about my dad's, I'll refer to him as my dad because it's just easier. Yeah. So his family, he's got 2 brothers, and one of them murdered his wife in May 2022.
Wow.
Yeah. My dad had a conversation with my mum and said, and these words were what, and both my sister ended up in therapy as well as a result of that. And we both say that our turning point was when our dad said to our mum, "Can you imagine I'd murder someone?" And that was my dad. And I just thought, we've lived in a house with you. You've abused us essentially through emotional violence. And then you've just said that you would have been capable of that.
Wow.
And me and my sister were just blown away, just like...
That's someone you love.
That's, yeah, you know, someone who still now, and this is where the therapy has been like, you need to put boundaries in place because you need boundaries there. That needs to stop. Like, you can't have a relationship with that person. And I was like, but how do you get rid of a relationship with someone who's helped put a roof over your head, put food on your table, has sort of nurtured some of your needs as a child and a teenager, but who also is... How do you forget that relationship? How do you get rid of it? How do you just put a sort of a line in place and go, no more? It's really, really hard. But with my real dad, I could do that tomorrow because I don't know him.
Yeah, you've not had that years of relationship building of a sort, positive or negative, I suppose. So, do you know what I have to say, Twig, that you're a very fun, happy person. If I had to describe you, I'd be like up for a laugh, you know, always positive, always happy. You're hiding a lot of shit here, aren't you?
Yeah.
And it's like, but we'll get to that. We'll get to the kindness bit in a bit. Let's just... So you've had your first horrendous experience of your best mate dying. You're carrying on with life, and then, so how were teens? How was your teens?
Teens were... So I was bullied all the way through school up until I was about 13, and I got...
Great.
I got bullied because I had short hair. So when I was 5, I was diagnosed with something called trichotillomania. I will quickly unpack that for you. Trichotillomania is basically it's defined as a sort of behavioural habit where you twist and pull your hair. So you might remember me from my younger years in the club where I might have had little bald patches and stuff on my head. Now I'm all right, to be honest with you. I sort of fluctuate between tugging a few hairs out my head and not. I don't know when I'm doing it. But as a youngster, so before I was 10, like little, really pulled it out a lot. I had like a grade 1. I looked like Sinead O'Connor. Like I had full on shaved head, probably up until I was about 12 or 13. And got bullied a lot for that. So lots of kids will be kids, won't they? Some children, they don't really understand. They ask questions, they're curious. So I got bullied a lot for that, and it never really bothered me. Also, I didn't think it bothered me. Like some of the things kids said to me then would absolutely cripple me now as an adult. I'd be like, I can't believe somebody's just saying, I'd be like broken. But it's like water off a duck's back when you're little. And then when I got into sort of my teens, I'd experienced all these emotions, which I'd obviously just packed away with losing my friend. And the bullying kind of stopped it. I found a group of people in school who were just awesome. And I'm still good friends with 2-3 of those people now. They were people who founded things like peer listening groups in the high school. We were a part of that. We all had experienced something that had broken that year of the school in losing a friend. And we'd all experienced this. Everybody was a little bit broken, and we just thought, do you know what? Our friends, our mates, our year group needs someone to vent to, because we felt like the school hadn't done that for us. So peer listening started, and we started this little, every lunchtime or every other lunchtime, we would be in like the library space, and people would just come to us and chat to us. Some people would just come with us and sit with us and eat their lunch. We would do the same. It wasn't all of us there all the time, so it was just lovely. So we met we were enabled by the school to do that, which was really, really quite precious. And as we sort of all aged and matured, we sort of built our own little friendship groups, and it just expanded. And I honestly can only say that in high school and maybe sixth form and approaching sort of university years, I really didn't experience horrible behaviours of other children or it felt like a really safe space.
Oh, thank goodness.
It was it was really lovely. I met, and it was in high school where I met Lauren Pringle, who we were in the same tutor group. We played hockey in PE. Then she was like, you like to go in goal. My mum will pick you up on whatever day it was for training.
So is that how you got into hockey?
That's how I got into hockey, yeah. So I met Lauren. Lauren and Julie used to come and pick me up for most games, and then Tracy, and then everybody used to just take me to, because no one in my family drove. So mum didn't drive, dad didn't drive, didn't have any close relatives who drove. So a lot of opportunities for me to play sports, especially with a big massive goalie back, were off the cards unless somebody else could help me. So I think that's probably why the Roots have always been so loyal to Northup, because...
Well, I think that's an act of kindness, isn't it? That's if it hadn't have been for like Julie, then you wouldn't have been enabled to be the amazing hockey player that you are now.
But yeah, it's without all of that, I absolutely would never have got into hockey. And hockey has probably been one of the biggest factors in releasing probably a lot of the anger that I've had built up over the years, and for a therapist to say you're full of anger, but you're at a point now where you're trying to work it out. I've just had 5 years away from hockey, and it kind of like, you look back and you go, maybe that was the saving grace. Maybe that is my saving grace. And I think hockey is my saving grace. Massively, like being back on the pitch, and I know we talked about this before, like being back on the pitch playing hockey, whether somebody puts 10 goals past me or
as if
if somebody puts that many goals past me, I'm not bothered. If I have a clean sheet, which I'd really like this season at least once.
It's not the best season, is it? Let's not go there.
Maybe one. One clean sheet would be blissful. It might have bothered me 10 years ago. I might have been like, it's personal when Wrexham beat us. Yeah. But that's the only result on fixture that I ever really...
It's weird, isn't it? So, because you had a break from hockey and I had a break as well. And now that I've come back and I'm clinging on to playing desperately, every game's precious. It's gone,
every game.
It's gone from taking it for granted to loving every minute, because it's that. I don't know where else in the world you can get that sense of community, that sense of we're doing this together, we're in it together, and that camaraderie that you get. I wish you could get it somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere that didn't hurt as much.
Yeah. Didn't hobble around the next day.
Just aching permanently.
Yeah.
But yeah, hockey and that group in school, and then I met all my friends who I joined bands with. I still have links with them now. They were the people who probably forged Twiggy that everybody knows today. That kind of fun. That we'll try that. Let's have a go at that. Always a shy. I think I'm probably still quite shy, and I always was throughout my teens. And I think that's probably just guarding myself from, do I know and do I trust the person or the people I'm around? I think as a person you gauge who you can be really open with. But what I found from starting therapy is about 12 months before I started therapy, I found that I was unravelling really quickly. What I mean by that is if somebody would listen, it would be the full life story with the behind the scenes
floodgates
features.
have opened.
Yeah, like you don't just get the short story, you get like the behind the scenes, extras.
Yeah.
You get the Easter eggs, you get everything, and it'd just be like, okay.
Only asked how you were.
I just thought I'd ask, what's going on? And that was really, I was fine. I was snapping at things in work. I was getting really short-tempered, and I don't lose my temper. I really, to get me up to sort of red mist level, it takes an excruciating amount of energy for someone to do that to get me there. But I found that I was getting there like really quickly, and it was a bit frightening. And that's when my sort of journey on being diagnosed formally with autism started, which was just absolutely, it unravelled me as a human being. I was like, who am I? Why am I? There's so many different things that I can explain now in my life.
So why did you think, I might be autistic? Why did you even consider that?
So I actually hadn't. So I've always had neurodivergence. So I've known I've had like dyslexia for a very long time. I'd accessed support in work through something called Able Futures, and they basically gave me like a buddy, like a mentor and he would go through all these different things with me. And within like 10 minutes of my first appointment with him, he'd asked me a few questions about what was bothering me, and he went, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Yeah," like, I'm not going to say no. And he was like, "Have you ever been diagnosed with autism? Or do you have autism?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "We're going to explore that. I'm going to send you some information and some leaflets, and I'm going to ask you to ring somebody who I used to work in a team with." And I was like, "Okay." And I had it was quite funny. I had a little session with North Wales Integrated Autism Service. I had a small conversation with this lady, and she was like, "Let's fill out the triage form. Let's get it," and it's very specific. So it was asking really blanket questions, and I was like, well, it entirely depends on the context of this question. And they were like, "Just answer it with your plain answer." And I was like, "I can't. I need more. I need to give you more. I need more context from you." And they were like, "Just answer the question." So I had to fill in this massive form about like ritualistic behaviour. And that was like, I used to collect bouncy balls when I was small. I had a huge collection of bouncy balls, hundreds of them, all like colour coordinated.
You still got them?
I don't have them anymore. But that's all a part of this hobby, sort of new hobby, new sort of collection, new thing, really like niche focus, like how many people collect bouncy balls. And then it'll just be like, "Oh, I'm done with the bouncy balls now. I finished with them. I have a new hobby.
Yeah.
I have a new hobby now. Thank you, goodbye. You've served your purpose."
Yeah.
And they were like, did other children do that you were friends with? And I was like, no. Was I not supposed to do that? And then they were like, "Were you obsessive?" And I was like, I was obsessed with bands. So like I absolutely obsessed over steps. Like I had magazine cuttings, newspaper cuttings. And I was like, "Is that not just normal teenage like kid behaviour?" They were like, "It is, but you catalogued them."
Just like to be organised.
I'm still waiting for the formal assessment, the formal diagnosis, but my therapist, her other line of work is to specialise in autism and ADHD assessments, and she was like, if somebody assesses you and says you're not autistic, they aren't very qualified at doing their job. And I was like, okay, I'll take it.
So say you are, what does that mean in real world though? How does that impact you?
I think that's probably what I've been most challenged with, is how does it impact me? Because I'm still Twiggy. There's no difference. I just now have a reason for maybe some of my behaviours and some of my ways. I don't really know. It's a really it kind of made me question my identity. Like, am I who I am, or have I just like created this mask to try and look like a normal human being? Not that I think anyone who is neurodivergent isn't normal, because I think everybody is.
We're all a little bit.
We're all people at the end of the day, and we all have our own things, our own little world, and our own ways of doing things. So I don't really know what it means for me, and what it will mean if, when they, I don't know.
And I think that's the thing. It's like we're going through. I did it with dyslexia, and I got diagnosed, and I actually got an iPhone out of it. So I was quite chuffed about that. That was a benefit. But in terms of impacting my life, I think it helped me understand that part of my issue is I don't remember things well, and that explained a lot how I struggled with exams. I don't write well, but that explained a lot in that I'd love to give presentations. So I'd already kind of always steered towards the things that you're better at anyway. So I think even without the diagnosis, you kind of weave your way.
You've already created a path for yourself.
You find your way to, I call it the workaround. There's always a workaround in my world.
Yeah.
And you just have to find it. And that's probably because I couldn't do things one way.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether a diagnosis. Yes, now I know. Lovely.
Yeah. I mean, it helped. Like, my dyslexia one was probably the most important diagnosis that I've ever had.
Did you get an iPhone?
I got a MacBook.
Oh,
I got a MacBook.
One up on me.
Yeah, but I was in uni.
Yeah.
So I got the MacBook, and that was brilliant help. All these like wonderful tools to help me, and if anything, despite the fact that the Microsoft Teams world gives me general anxiety, and just in general, the immersive tools that has to help people who are neurodivergent are fantastic. Like everything I own digitally is on dark mode because it's just so much nicer on my eyes. Everything I own has some way of verbally reading things back to me, the immersive reader functions and things like that. So that's a big help. But I really don't know what.
And maybe you'll discover. You're on a journey, aren't you? And I'd love to know. Maybe we need to do part 2 when you've been diagnosed. And
maybe, maybe.
Right, let's go back to the 17-year-old, because we didn't. Yeah. So
17-year-old, dad's in prison.
So how did you find out dad's going to prison?
I'd actually been in the high school here in Saltney. I was in my first year of sixth form. I'd just finished a music technology class, got the bus back, was in the kitchen. Mum had finished work. She came in. She was like, "Is your dad back yet?" Because he'd been in court and he didn't want us there. And I was like, "No, not seen him." So she rang the court up, was like, "I just wanted to find out where my partner is." And they were like, "Oh yeah, he's been sent to prison, 18 months. So I'm in the kitchen, my mum's on the phone. This sadness just came over me, because instantly I was like, my poor mum now has me, who's 17. I'm in full-time education, so my job is a paper round. I make £8 a week. And my sister, she'd have been maybe just 13. And I'm like, how's my mum going to manage? And then everything just spiralled. My mum suffered with mental health problems, and I didn't know that at that point. I'd always known there'd been some struggle, and I expected it because of the way dad had been in the house and the way the household was. Towards the sort of end of that year, my mum tried to take her own life. So I'm there, 17, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. What do I do here? I have no idea how to deal with this. My dad's in jail. My mum's just tried to do this. What do I do? So I went and tried to pay the bills for the house. Like, I just had, in my head, I just went into like this routine of, well, I need to assume like the responsible adult now, I need to pay the bills, otherwise mum's house is going to get taken away.
Was your mum taken away? Where's your mum at this point?
So she's in hospital. She was in Wrexham. And I was just like, I had close family who lived nearby, her sisters, her brothers, were all there, and they were there with me, supporting me. My nan was there. But internally, I was thinking, in the unit, in our house, I know dad is going to ring the house at 7:30 tonight from prison and expect to speak to mum. How do I deliver that to dad? And it was just like this huge moment of, where do I go with this? How do I deal with this? I don't, and I just cut it off. In my mind, I was just like, this is just what I'm going to have to do. I'm just going to have to cope with it. That's it. So that was really, really pretty heavy. That was a heavy...
So did you pay the bills, and where did you get the money from?
I'd occasionally gone and helped my mum by paying the bills at the post office for her anyway. So I knew where things were. I knew where my mum's bank cards and things were. And I knew her routine. I knew that on a certain day she needed to pay rent. She needed to pay council tax. I knew those things. So I just did what I could, did the best I could, really. I went and did that at the post office. I went and spoke to one of her friends who has grown into be one of my friends. And it was just really confusing. It was a really confusing space to be. I talked a lot about it in therapy because she tried to take her own life twice. And the second time, my recollection of it was really poor. And I was really angry in therapy about that. I was like, I don't understand. I said, I can tell you word for word the things and what I was doing at the time when the first time she tried to take her own life. And she was like, the second time obviously impacted you more. And I was like, well, how can you say that? Like, I don't understand how you can say that. When I was 17, I was younger, and she was like, no, if you don't remember the second time impacted you more. And I still don't really have a very good recollection of that second time.
And so, I mean, how long did that last for? How long was your mum in hospital? And
so she was only in hospital for about 5 or 6 days. So and that's the first time she was in hospital for about 5 or 6 days. It was around about November time, and that's the second time she went into hospital again for a very small number of days. And then she got support from a therapist called Jean. And I always remember, at this point, I was driving once she was having her therapy. I remember I would take her up to Aston House and wait outside while she was in her sessions. And I was really lucky, I suppose, that I was in that phase between transitioning in uni when you've got, like, you expect to have thousands of pounds worth of education in a week, and you don't get that. You get like two lectures if you're lucky. So I had loads of free time. I'd got myself a little job in McDonald's, and they were really helpful with letting me have the time to go and take mum, or be there if mum couldn't get there. So they were really great. So she got that support, and I'll always remember that she told me, she said, you need to remember that these therapists, they haven't cured me, they haven't fixed me, but they've given me the tools to make sure that I don't fall off that train again, and that I can recognise. And that was like this small weight off my shoulders of, maybe I don't need to always be mindful of what might be coming. I don't need to be aware of mum's emotions. And that I talked and unpacked that a lot in therapy, which was really difficult because I've got such a great relationship with my mum, that even the thought of a therapist saying to me, your mum's actions and through no fault of her own have damaged you, and it's like,
I think
your
mum
really like this.
She's recognise that though, won't she?
And she does. You know, I've had wonderful conversations with her especially in the last like 18 months. We talk really openly about things, and she recognises it. She talks about it, but still, it's a little bit like, oh, you're still my mum, and you still have been through so much. And
it's like the relationship's changed, hasn't it? Because your mum's supposed to, in a traditional relationship, they're there supporting you, whereas actually the tables are turned here, and you're the main support. Like, well, you know, when your mum got out of hospital, it's like she's still not well.
Yeah.
But what, does she go back to work? Does she, like, how do you?
It was just confusing. She did go back to work. I think she went back about a week or two later, and I think that just shows like the tenacity of where someone is at when they make that decision. For some people, I think it's very final. They've made it. I'm doing it, and I'm gone. And then others, I think it's really treading a fine line of, I want to stop the noise, but I don't know. And I think we were really lucky with mum on both times. Really, really lucky. I don't remember. I think that was my first ever really negative experience with the ambulance service as well. The second time, it was just they were really dismissive. That's the only part of that day that I remember, is how dismissive the ambulance service were. And I remember thinking, wow.
And is that, so your mum, she attempted suicide with?
So I think she'd used glass this time.
Oh, so it was, so there was a physical injury.
Yeah.
So the ambulance service came out to take her to A&E. Yeah. But they knew what she'd done, and that's why they were dismissive.
Yeah. Wow. And it was hard. We found out the second time. So that's a part I do remember. We found out the second time that because of my dad's criminal history, they had black marked or like from my experience in the ambulance service, they'd flagged our address as a dangerous address essentially. And understanding that, so the police came that time, so understanding that vexed me, like it infuriated me, like I mean, I understand that now. You know, I was only 19, I think, when the second time. So that vexed me. But as an adult now who's worked for 10 years in ambulance service, I absolutely understand why. It's just really sad. The context of it, you just think there's kids in the house, there's, you know, this is crazy. But then
you've got to protect. It's so complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
So thank goodness your mum's all right.
She's a ledge.
She's come out of 2 suicide attempts, back in work. I mean, you're what, 18 now?
19.
19. You finished you managed to get to uni.
Got to uni.
Locally, I assume.
Wrexham.
Right, so you went to Wrexham Uni.
Went and did 2 degrees. So I did.
So one not enough.
One wasn't enough. did a sound and studio technology degree and then a sound and performance technology degree. So one was a foundation, because I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't manage academically because I got diagnosed with dyslexia as I went into uni.
Okay.
I had a wonderful English language teacher who was like, you hold your pen funny, just ask student services to help you out there. She was like, I think you've got dyslexia. And I was like, okay, thank you very much.
Isn't it just there's those individuals, isn't there? So if she hadn't have been observant, followed it up, and
yeah.
There's always people like that in your life that have...
Key people, yeah. I remember in high school I had a maths teacher. I really struggled with maths, and Miss Morley, she was like, she gave me extra tuition. And I remember when I got my GCSE results, she was the first one I went to, and I was like, Miss, I've got a B in maths, thanks. Like fist pump in the middle of the school. And like, you do remember those people throughout your life who've not believed in you, sort of known that you've got the potential to do things, you know. I imagine there's probably a lot of kids who'd look at a B now and think, a B? I want an A. I was quite happy with a B.
I was happy with a B.
I was quite happy with that B, to be honest with you.
So we've got you. You're at uni. You've done 2 degrees at uni.
Yeah.
Home life still. Is it calmed down? Your dad's out of prison.
Dad's out of prison. Dad leaves the house when I'm about 21, 22. House becomes a lovely place to be.
Okay, good.
Really, really nice place to be. Uni's great. Hockey's great. I've discovered alcohol. Great.
Good years. We've finally got some good years coming.
Great years. I have a great time working at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's to help me pay for my driving and things like that. Because responsibility came along and it's like, oh, cars aren't cheap.
Yeah.
Petrol isn't cheap. Insurance isn't cheap. Which was really cool.
So life's good. What about relationships at this point? Where are we out yet?
So I actually came out the day before my mum tried to take her own life the second time. So there was a small period of time where I looked at that and thought, oh, did mum...
Yeah.
But that's never stuck. That never ever stuck. It was just a passing sort of thought. And mum's visited that and said, absolutely no chance. My head was in another little universe and it was nothing to do with that. And I think she said something along the lines of, to be honest, I've always known.
Hasn't everyone?
I've always known. So I was like 19 when that happened. So yeah, 19. So that's when I came out. So I was already openly gay in uni. Never really had an interest in girls though. Like, was not interested in relationships in the slightest till I was in my mid sort of 20s, towards finishing uni, and I don't know, maybe looking at everyone else as a husband now. All my friends they're all married, they've got kids. And I'm just thinking, maybe I should explore that. I had a partner for a little while, was with her for about 6 years, and then had like a mixture of different people, okay, nothing was really... I kind of got a little bit guarded around people, and then I ended up with somebody who was really abusive for about 18 months, and that was really, really hard. And that was quite recent, so that was like 2017. So that was really, really difficult. I haven't got to that point in therapy yet and talking about that. So
do you think some of that is because of your like why are you attracted to, or did you not know when you met her?
I didn't know when I met her, but it's almost like that fixing somebody. Kind of took it upon myself. Is this my responsibility to maybe see that there's a fracture in somebody and take responsibility for trying to help fix them, and then you just end up being a victim of narcissists. And it was awful. That relationship was minging, like proper horror story relationship. And then I met Steph.
And that's been a good while now.
2019, yeah. So
nearly 5 years.
Nearly 5 years in June.
Excellent.
There we are. I'm glad I remember that one.
And has it been like fine in terms of like work and...
For me and Steph have been fine, but she doesn't work in the ambulance service anymore. That was a bit tricky. That was quite tricky.
So you finished uni. How did you get from uni and McDonald's to working in the ambulance service?
Right, okay. So tried desperately to get into the fire brigade. And I mean, fire brigade was where I wanted to be. I'd gone for the police when I was like 19, 20. Hadn't got in because of Dad's criminal history. Desperately wanted to be in the fire brigade. I think I went all over the country. I even flew to Ireland to do the fitness tests, failed because I was absolutely exhausted after being on a boat I was on a boat with Man United fans after a FA Cup final or something, and I just did not sleep the whole way. Literally walked off the coach in County Armagh it was. Didn't even go to the hotel, had to go straight to the sports centre because it was literally like, I've got minutes to spare and failed miserably because I was just exhausted, but who knows. But 19 services I applied for across the board.
Wow.
I didn't get anywhere close. And I remember some feedback I got off, because you didn't get feedback very often, some feedback I got was you just need a little bit more life experience. And at the time I'm thinking, really?
Yeah. But I can confer that you don't.
I was just thinking, all right, okay, then I'll take it. So they talked to me about volunteering. So I was like, well, I've been turned away from the police. I wanted to be a special constable to volunteer, to get experience, and I couldn't. So I was like, what else can I do? So I just started looking at volunteering opportunities in the Flintshire area. And I found St John Ambulance in Deeside. I inquired. I didn't get very far very quickly. And then I turned into that annoying little person who was just like, hello, I'm arriving. Like, are you here? Like, hello, please, I want to volunteer with you. Please take me. And they did. In the end, I got my first aid qualification. I started meeting all these new people. And it turned into this. I absolutely thrived in the voluntary world. I loved it. I was like, this is incredible. I'm giving you my time. I feel great for this. I'm getting all these different experiences, qualifications, these skills, and I'm out doing something I really enjoy, and I wasn't expecting this. And I got to a point where there was a bit of a change in the division that I was volunteering in, and they were looking at changing things up, and they didn't know what to do, but they'd recognised that we had adult members and badgers. So the badgers, once they get to 10, they had nothing to go to. Most of the divisions had cadets, and I was like, I'll start cadets. I'll do it. I'll do it. So I went and did the adult leadership course, started up the cadet unit. We had about 20 cadets within about 2-3 weeks. So we had like open day sessions. We ran on lists, and I spent hundreds of hours either on duty, volunteering at football matches, at the Eisteddfod, motocross, running cross country, running events, all these different. It took me to so many different places, and then I started working with these incredible young people who I started quickly realising were just like me. They come from all kinds of backgrounds. They come from backgrounds that you could tell were maybe damaged. They come from backgrounds where they had maybe more privileges than other children, but they all had one common thing, is they all wanted to do something to help people. And I was like, we have to nurture this, because these are incredible young people. And I absolutely thrived there. And I was like, what can I do in my day-to-day? You know, I'm still working at McDonald's. I'm absolutely busting my balls away over burgers, chips and pop. And it was getting a bit boring, and it was getting a little bit repetitive in that world. And I was like, I need to give back to something different. You know, there's only so many Olympic Games that I can want to go and make burgers for people at. Like, I only want to do that once. I'm getting sick of this. And I just thought, I'll try the NHS. But instantly I thought, well, what am I going to do in the NHS? You know, I'm an engineer. I've got a science degree and an engineering degree. What am I going to do? You know, completely blinkered. You know, I like playing hockey. I want to be in the fire brigade. How am I going to manage in the NHS? And then I saw this job, which was for the patient care service in the ambulance service. And I read the job description and I was like, well, that's basically what I do with St John. I'll give it a go. Got an interview. Was absolutely blown away. I was like, what? I don't know what am I going to do? I've only had one interview in my life for McDonald's. How am I going to get this job? And I got the job, and I was absolutely thrilled. I was over the moon. But what I quickly realised was that meant St John had to slow down.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I was taken away. It became a chore. So St John became a chore because I was tired, because I was working till silly hours. and I was heartbroken and I couldn't go back, and I took a team leader role in the ambulance service, and I had to quit St John, and I missed that. But I think for me it was really hard now to go back and want to start that again, because in my mind, in my little world, I've still got double the pressure now, double the workload, and I'm just thinking, where do I have time to fit their new schedule? I follow them on all social media, and to see some of them do well, I've seen some of them apply for jobs with me, and I'm thinking, yes,
I started that.
That's amazing. And I don't know, I think at the moment I'm just at this point where I'm just looking for something else to do.
So you became an ambulance driver, didn't you? You missed that bit out.
Yep, so that's what I did. So the patient care service was driving the ambulances.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was driving the ambulances around, I would say, one particular area, but it took me all over the country. So I've been to Edinburgh, I've been to...
And is that different to the emergency?
Yeah. So that one is taking people for like routine appointments.
Right, okay, yeah.
Renal dialysis, oncology appointments and oncology treatment. And it's a wonderful job. It's probably one of the best parts of the ambulance service, because, understandably you see people decline in health when you're doing that job, because you see them so frequently. But then you also see people who've already had the worst day of their life. They've had that horrific accident, they've been in the helicopter, they've broken both legs, they've got cages on their legs and things like that. And then it's your job to help them get from A to B for all their treatment for a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And you see this slow sometimes it's rapid, increase in their abilities, their mobility comes back, their confidence comes back. And then you get to a point where they're like, it's my last time that I'm going to need you now, because I can drive my own car next week to go to my physio. And that is a privilege that only the clinicians in the hospitals probably get to see. And you don't ever get that. You've got time as an ambulance person to build that rapport with somebody in the back of the ambulance when you hear all that. They tell you everything because they see the uniform and they're like, I trust you. I'm going to tell you. A bit like me when someone asked me how I was 12 months ago, and I'm like, and they would talk to you about so many different things. And when I asked you about thinking about what I maybe needed to think about with kindness, it was really hard for me to think about something that wasn't something I was getting paid to do. And it's like, how do I distinguish what kindness almost feels like an obligation? I have to be kind because it's my job. Then I was like, but not every person will be kind, even if they're being paid. And I was like, where's the line? Because it just feels normal. But then you think... That's
interesting.
Yeah.
So, you have got a job where you have to be nice to people. But I suppose what's the difference in being nice to someone and being kind to them? And I'd say, well, there is no right or wrong, is there? But if you're willing to listen...
Yeah.
I can imagine some people who have got something else going on in the mind and they just don't want to engage in conversation. Whereas if someone actively listens, I suppose that's a step above and beyond what you'd be expected. And I can imagine you wanting to... You'd be prompting them with questions, and you'd be remembering, so the next week that you see them, you'd be like, how did it go?
But that stirred a sort of thought in my mind. I was like, I'm not kind.
So you're saying that you could only think of examples in work of where you'd been kind?
I think so, yeah. It was really hard.
Game on.
The only other thing I could think of, and it was, Steph was laughing at me. I was like, I took a lady home from a hairdresser's appointment once because it was raining and she was really upset that her hair was going to get wet. And she was like, well, that's a nice thing to do. And I was like, but is it kind?
Yes.
She was like, I wouldn't really mind if my hair got wet. And she was like, but she's just paid all that money to have nice hair. And I was like, okay. I just couldn't.
But for to me, that is a wonderful example of kindness, because you've looked at it from their perspective.
Yeah.
You really don't care if your hair gets a bit damp, but you looked at it from her perspective and was like, I can do something about this. And you went out of your way.
I don't know, but I just didn't see it as kindness. I was just like, it's just what anybody would do, surely. And she was like, no, not everybody would do that. I was like,
no, not many people would do that. And I think this is it, isn't it? It's like, you are a kind person.
Thanks.
In what you do and how you are and how you support people. But what you find is people don't recognise that as kindness.
Yeah.
You don't... Some of that might be, I don't know, do you see yourself positively or do you see yourself negatively?
Yeah, I suppose. I think I've got good energy. I think I've got a positive energy.
that in itself is hard to get, so well done. It's like, but by having a positive energy, that must mean that you want, you go out and want to make people's lives better, and that in itself is kindness, isn't it?
I guess so. I mean, I look back at my days in St. John, and I probably think that was probably the kindest time for me, because I felt so passionate about making sure that every one of those children had the same experience, an opportunity that I felt I hadn't quite had.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to make sure you've got a pathway to follow, and I want to help pave that, and you either can follow it and make your own little world and do your own little things, or don't, it's up to you. But to see that so many of them to just do things that they were passionate about and felt empowered enough to do that, it's like, yes.
And so now you've stopped working as an ambulance driver.
Yeah.
And you moved into management.
Yeah.
How's that going? Why did you do that first of all?
I hurt myself. So my knee has always been bad, and it was getting quite heavy. Working operationally in an ambulance is quite heavy going. So I've moved people who are pushing 40 stone, and that takes its toll on your body, along with throwing yourself at the ground on a hockey pitch every Saturday. And that took its toll on my body massively. And then I had an incident where I fell with a patient and I hurt my back. And I remember being like, oh, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this without massively impeding on my quality of life. Like that. And I was, at the time, I was like 29, and I was like, I'm not even 30 yet. And I know that when I hit 30, I'm going to be reliant on painkillers. I just had an op on my knee, and I was like, this is too much. I need to think seriously about where I see my future in the ambulance service. And at the moment, as much as I want it to still be in the back of an ambulance with those patients, having those conversations and being a part of their treatment, I can't sustain that without seriously harming myself, basically. So I was like, what skills do I have? I'd been a shift manager in McDonald's. I'd done leadership courses with the voluntary sector. And I was like, I quite enjoy leading people. I quite enjoy that. I'd already taken a leadership role in the ambulance service just as a station team leader, which in its own right is a degree in management. I thought, you know what? I'll go for an operations manager's role. Wow.
Is that what you are?
I am an operations manager, yes. So I cover Flintshire, Wrexham and Denbighshire. So I've got quite a big patch.
So how many ambulances in that? What?
Just over 100 staff. Ambulance-wise, I think we've got 52 fleet responsibility-wise. So it's a lot of vehicles. But I look over 4 stations, 2 of which are big stations. So Dobbs Hill's a massive MRD. It's one of the first in Wales to be built, which was like an amalgamation of lots of other ambulance stations into one. And then Wrexham, the big ambulance and fire resource centre.
And what do you have to do? Do you have to? You can't line manage that many people. There's too many.
No, so the station isn't mine. So isn't mine wholly. So so the operations director at the ambulance service is split into 2. So you have the emergency operations. You have ambulance care, which is non-emergency and urgent care. So the urgent guys drive around in some of the yellow vehicles, and the non-urgent guys drive around in either cars or small white ambulances. I say they're small white ambulances there. So I have a team of 6 team leaders across the 4 stations. So Wrexham is huge, so I've got 3 team leaders there. And Dobbs Hill, I've got 2 team leaders, and I've got one for real area. So they have their own teams that they manage, and I sort of overarch above. I don't like saying above. I've got quite a flat hierarchy. I'm quite, if I need to go work on an ambulance, I'll go work on an ambulance. So it's quite
that's a big responsibility. That's huge. Did you want that?
I don't really know. There's parts of it I love. There's parts of it that I really struggle with. I think my mindset is that because it's so strategic, because I'm looking at budgets, I'm looking at compliances, KPIs. It's very numbers focused and information focused, and in my mind we're an ambulance service and I'm a person focused. I like people, I like helping people, I like seeing the end result of helping someone. So sometimes I get really frustrated with the focus on numbers, because I'm like, well, not really, we shouldn't be a business, we are a service for people. So that has probably been the hardest transition, and probably it will always be really difficult for me to see beyond. I'll always be the person in the meeting who's like, well, I've been in the back of an ambulance and I don't think that's going to work. So sometimes I'm really unpopular, sometimes I'm really helpful, because especially if it's practical. If I'm having an input and I'm like, oh, let me give you a really practical input into how that's going to look inside a small tin box. It's going to look like this, and it's not going to work very well, or it's going to cause more problems than it will solve. So I enjoy those hands-on sides of things. Well, I think what's been the hardest part of me enjoying this role to its maximum is the introduction of, when the pandemic came along, everybody went remote. Everybody, I think, in the world went to remote working, and that has been a massive struggle for me. I can't focus on a screen for an hour, let alone 3 or 4 hours. Some of these meetings go on for. It's really difficult, really challenging, because I just don't see an outcome. All I see is a meeting with some actions, and then we're going to have another meeting with some more actions. And I'm thinking, well, if this had been in a physical room, we'd have delegated actions and we'd come back, or we wouldn't have come back. We'd have just said, that's done. Here you go. Here's the email. Here's the information. We've done that. I've actioned that, like, straight away, rather than coming off a digital virtual meeting straight onto another virtual meeting about something different. So your mind, you don't get this sort of reset time, and it takes away a lot of the personal touches that you need, I think, to be a good ops, or what I feel is needed to be a good ops manager.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I try my very best to have as many in-person interactions as possible, because otherwise I think I'd go insane. Yeah.
Who loves Teams?
Yeah.
At Microsoft, probably. So let's talk about kindness. So we have a little bit throughout, but have you got any other acts of kindness where someone's done something to you potentially?
I have an awesome example. So about 3 or 4 months ago, I was driving home from work towards the end of a pay period, so I was probably a bit tight on longer, and I'd pulled up at the BP, which I now think is an Asda, by Carewis, the sinking kettle. And I put like 15 quid's worth of petrol in my car, which if I was putting 15 quid in, I was skint, because I'd normally just fill. And I went and got myself a bottle of pop, and I got to the till. There was a couple of people in front of me. I got to the till, and I said, pump whatever. I think I was pump 2 or something. And she went, oh, someone's just paid for that for you and told me to say thank you for what you do. And I was just like, I was welling up. The lady behind the till was welling up. I was like, who? Are they still here? I need to go and say thank you.
Were you in your uniform?
I was in my uniform, yeah. I was in my uniform. I was in my uniform.
Wow, that is ace.
And normally I'd travel with a hoodie on, but for some reason that day it was probably warm. It might have been a hotter day than usual. I didn't have my hoodie on, and somebody had paid for my petrol. And I was absolutely blown away.
That was wonderful.
It was so awesome. It was such a lovely thing that somebody had done.
And how did that make you feel?
I instantly felt guilty, which might not be what you were expecting me to say, because I was like, oh my goodness, someone's just like, that might be an hour's work or 2 hours work for somebody. Why have they done that? Or why would somebody do that to me? I've got to find them. Like, I have to find them and recognise, thank you so much. You didn't have to. Do you want...
But guilt's a weird emotion, isn't it?
It's a useless emotion, I think. It shouldn't.
That's fair.
But yeah, so that was, for me, it was like instant, like, I'm so happy, but I'm also, I feel like I felt like a criminal leaving the forecourt, because I was like, I'm not paid for my petrol. What do I do? Like, but it was really nice. It was really nice for someone to do something nice like that. I think I put something up on Facebook and it went viral on Hit the Ambulance Workers, which is like, I think it's called Hit the Ambulance Gamers or something. And they basically, whenever there's an ambulance, they'll put like these little care packages on the handle, or they'll put it on the bonnet, and it's like full of snacks and pop and nice
just so people
things.
Go around.
I think they're called Ambulance Hit Gamers, and there's people all over the country that do it, all over the world probably.
Really?
Yeah, they're like a full-on Facebook community. So I thought, if I'm gonna recognise or find the person who did this for me, which is such a lovely thing for somebody to do, because it's bigger than just 15 quid's worth of petrol. That's my way of getting to and from work. And that's a massive thing, So I posted on this, I posted that some wonderful person had done this, and if they're out there and they don't want to be named, then that's fine, but please know that I'm really grateful and thank you so much. And no one ever came forward. No one ever did come forward and say, oh, yeah, that was me, or anything like that. I have no idea. I still have no idea. I know it was a man, but I have absolutely no idea.
But it's stayed with you, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that small act of kindness something that it's probably irrelevant to him, you know, it's probably, I'll just get that while I'm, you know. But for you, the person who receives it, yeah. And that's so wonderful, isn't it?
It was so, so lovely. I just thought, what an incredible thing for someone to do, for another human being to go, oh, I'll pay you.
And have you had a thing put on your ambulance with some snacks and stuff in it?
I have. I've been really lucky. So I remember being outside the discharge lounge in Wrexham Myler, and come back out to the vehicle, and there was somebody had opened the door in the ambulance, so we'd obviously been a bit naughty and not locked the vehicle, but there would have been a reason, probably the tail lift was probably down, and they'd left like tubs and tubs and tubs of Rose's sweets on the driver's seat, and you know, and you're like, oh, I'm so happy about this, but oh no,
not more chocolate.
More chocolate, I'm going to be so fat. But things like that, my goodness, people give you money. People will try and give you money, and you have to explain, oh, I can't take, this is free, you know, this is... Some people are very insistent, and then you have to go through like the gifts, declaration of gifts process. But I remember one person one time made me this beautiful, and I still have it, and it's in my ID. It's a little tiny tile. It was a cancer patient, and I'd probably transported her a lot throughout her treatment, and she made me this little tiny tile, and she painted it and had a little angel on it, and it was beautiful, and I still have it now. It's a lovely little thing, and that was probably one of the nicest gifts somebody's ever given me,
and that,
because it was personal,
isn't it? And they thought about it, yeah. And it's thoughtfulness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example, because we always say, what are the top 3 things around kindness that you would kind of share? And you've got one there.
Absolutely.
If you do something that's thoughtful, it means a lot more.
Absolutely.
Because it's personal.
Yeah.
But have you got any others? What else?
It's really hard. I mean, like, one that sticks out for me was something I did for a patient, and it's the smallest thing. She was really upset. We were taking her on a journey which was like from somewhere in the North Wales coast all the way to the top end of Liverpool, and she was really sad, and she was just visibly heartbroken. And I was like, I gauged quite quickly that nothing I could say would actually soothe her in any way. I couldn't offer her any advice, and she didn't want to talk. And in the end I just said, what can I do for you to make this an easier journey? And she just asked me to hold her hand. Oh. And from the end of the coast, basically, North Wales coast, all the way to Liverpool, I just held this person's hand. And it was just completely silent. And it was just somebody holding your hand for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that was like, I don't see it as kindness, I just see it as another way of doing my job. But I could see what that meant, you know, and then taking that person to where they were going, and then returning them back. And she was so much more open and talkative with me on the way back. She was like, I don't need you to hold my hand now. And it was so this wow.
It's around, like, I think this is empathy, or
maybe,
you know, it's like you're kind of listening to people, like, and sensing, engaging what you think people's needs are, and then responding to that.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what empathy is, because sometimes you can't help them, but you can sit alongside them. And
yeah.
So we'll have empathy. You can have empathy as number 2. I need a third one.
So what have I got?
So we've got thoughtfulness. So the best acts of kindness are where you put a bit of thought into them. We've got, like, really actively being empathetic towards somebody. So listening to what they have to say. Is that 2? Because you've got actually just listening to someone is an act of kindness, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you've got empathy, where you're responding to what? Because empathy isn't sometimes listening, it's sensing, it's other... So I think that they can be your 3, Twig.
All right, then.
Unless you've got any others.
No,
I think they're quite a good 3 then.
I think they're quite a good 3, yeah.
Well, I want to say massive thank you.
Thank you for
I have to say, like, I've known you for years, and you don't know someone. You don't know someone, do you? And hockey's a bit different, because you rock up and you... But I've been out drinking quite a lot with you, but again, it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's like... And you're such a lovely human that, like, you wouldn't know. Like, and I don't know whether that's important or not, because you've kind of formed who you are. Because of what you've been through, you've become this lovely human, probably despite as well. Do you feel like you're your authentic self?
I don't know. And that has probably, going back to the identity crisis of, oh, by the way, you might be autistic, and understanding, have I masked, have I created a persona? Is Twiggy my mask?
But then does that matter? Because
Twiggy is Twiggy.
That's who you become, and sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, don't you? Of my life. So maybe actually you've become this authentic, wonderful, kind, loving person because you've forged that and you've worked hard at creating positive energy. And, you know, when you're feeling a bit rubbish, you're like, right, let's turn that around. Let's be positive with people.
Yeah.
So what a brilliant thing to do, and keep going because it's working.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Curious Chats and Kind Acts. It was lovely to have you. Can I just say a massive thank you to all the people that we've interviewed who have been so honest and vulnerable with me so that we can have these real life stories to share with you, our wonderful listener. And remember, we'd love to hear what random or small acts of kindness you've been up to so that we can maybe do a few. Find us on all the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and all our /ActsGB, that's ACTSGB. And drop a comment on our feed, tweet us, or even send a photo. Let's build our kindness community together. We'll read some of our favourites on future episodes of Curious Chats and Kind Acts. And you never know, we might even have a go at a few of your ideas ourselves. Watch this space on the socials. For more information about the Acts charity, including how to donate to us, head to actsonline.uk. See you next time.